Close to 800,000 people die due to suicide every year, which is one person every 40 seconds. Suicide is a global phenomenon and occurs throughout the lifespan. There are indications that for every adult who died by suicide, there may have been more than 20 others making the attempt. Today we will hear from Minister Dr. Mekesha Bates, who will bring a wealth of knowledge and positive information that will clear up many of the mental health myths and set you on a path of solitude and peace.
I am Minister Dr. Mekesha Bates, a mental health provider and owner of Gift of Dreams Wellness and Consulting. I am a graduate of Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, where I received my Doctorate of Nursing Practice, Masters of Public Health, and Masters in the Science of Nursing with a focus in psychiatric mental health. Additionally, I am a graduate of the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology at Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia. Currently, less than 5% of all mental health providers are African American, and recognizing the need for mental health providers of color and the cultural gap that occurs when people do not see someone that looks like them as their provider, it made me decide to actually want to go in the field to be of service to those who may need mental health assistance. I have been practicing in the field of mental health since approximately 2009, and I have enjoyed my work where I've been able to work with both military and civilians in Cleveland, Ohio, and the DC, Maryland, and Virginia areas. So there are a number of factors that are involved in why people do not seek the assistance that they may need. Included is the fact that they may not even recognize they need mental health assistance. They may not recognize that there is an imbalance going on. Because when we think about mental health and mental illness, it is not that there are polar opposites. There is a continuum. So on a day in which you may be able to actually handle and cope with life in a very, very comfortable manner, there may be other times when you're not able to. So when you look at the fact of even recognizing that there is some form of dis-ease that's going on in your body, that's one factor to consider. Additionally, you have to consider, are there therapists or providers, psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health nurse practitioners in which they feel comfortable talking to? You also must consider insurance, or whether money is a factor for other people. But also the stigma of receiving mental health assistance is an issue because no one wants to be identified as having a weakness. People are often think that you can pray away mental illness, or that this is something that they should be able to handle themselves. And when thinking like that, or growing up in households in which they are told you don't take your business out to other people, you don't share things like this, suck it up, you may have heard that, or don't cry, that you're a strong black woman or you're a strong black man, so therefore you should be able to overcome this. For people who are Christians or in the church, having thoughts that this can be prayed out of you, or if you just had enough faith, then this should be something that you should handle. Those are all reasons why people do not actually seek the mental health assistance that they may need. So when looking at our youth and when looking at our adults, you'll oftentimes see very similar signs when it comes to having a mental illness or a mental health disorder. Notice you'll look for signs such as, how are they sleeping? Are they eating too much or too little? Are they tearful or crying? Do they talk about being helpless or hopeless? Are they talking about feeling guilty? You'll also look for problems such as issues with concentration. Are they worrying a lot or expressing that they have had thoughts of hurting themselves or hurting someone else, or even saying the word suicide? You must also look at irritability. Are they snapping at you or snapping at another loved one? Do they seem like they're despondent, or they're just not there even though you're in the room with them? So those are just a few of the signs that you can have, but it's also dependent upon what type of mental illness they are actually dealing with. There's a difference between the signs and symptoms of depression versus that of anxiety versus that of some other form of mental illness. mental health, everyone has mental health. So if you have 5 people, 5 out of 5 of those people will have mental health, just like physical health. Mental illness, 1 out of every 5 people have been or will be diagnosed with a mental illness. So there is a clear distinction between mental health everyone has versus being diagnosed with a mental illness, which is 1 out of 5 people. Understanding that we as a people actually have gone through or continue to go through generational trauma, because things that happen to our ancestors are carried through DNA, are carried culturally in how we interact with each other, how we respond to different situations, and even triggers that may come. When we think about all the things that are handed down, if you think about it, your grandmother or grandfather may have handed down a tradition or even a recipe. So just like those things can be handed down, then you have to understand the trauma and the cultural norms that they have experienced for what was going on with them is also handed down additionally. We must also understand that when you meet a person, you're dealing with everything that person has been through in their life. And also you must understand if they have developed positive coping skills, then it will determine how they handle different situations. What are their triggers? What are the things that make them go from being able to be stable versus having that moment in which they are more unstable, meaning they are not actually able to handle situations and may come off as more irritable, more stressed, worrying about things that if they had the correct coping tools, then they would handle in a very different situation. So understanding that traumas that may occur in childhood or traumas that may have occurred to your mother, your father, or your grandparents, when you are dealing with life, understand that they are people too. And so how they raise you, the things that occur in your household, those things are all determined based upon the traumas that they may have experienced, but not only the traumas that they experienced. How did they learn to handle those traumas? Was it in a positive way or was it in a not so positive way? And those things become ways in which they teach you as a child or you teach your children in the future. There is something called post-traumatic slave syndrome or PTSS, in which we currently are still dealing with the trauma that our ancestors faced during the time of slavery. There's also something that is called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and those stressors can be related to race, it can be related to discrimination, and all of those affect the mental health of African Americans and those who we actually come into contact with. So, and that is through the Health and Human Services. This is something that the Surgeon General has actually stated, because of the things that have occurred through racism, discrimination that affect minorities, the mental health of minorities are also affected. So understanding these things and being more compassionate to those that are around you, because you never know what any person is facing on any particular day. And it's not something that occurs in a silo, or it could happen to one person and not happen to anyone else. Mental health and or a mental health disorder can happen at any time to anyone, regardless of your race, your gender, your socioeconomic standing, or whether you are a Christian or not. I want to make sure I stress that, because Christians can have mental illness. It can affect them also. And it also is something that even though you may seek prayer, you may read the Bible, you can still have depression. You can still have anxiety. You can still have other things that are occurring with you. If you look in the Bible within itself, there are people who had depression. If you look at David, and there were a number of things that were going on with him. If you look at in the books of 1 Kings, Elijah was suicidal at one point. So understanding that you are not alone will help people to realize that this is something that they can talk about. This is something they could actually get the help they need for. And there is no shame in doing so. So letting go of your past, it is also more of understanding what happened in the past. Our brains are magnificent organs in which we sometimes place things in different silos and different compartments. And you may even say, well, that doesn't bother me, until there is an event that occurs or someone that brings back to remembrance that thing that did occur. And you're wondering why you're depressed. You're wondering why you're crying. You're wondering why those negative thoughts are entering your mind and you can't get rid of them. And that is because these issues, these things that occurred have not been addressed. And when I say being addressed, that means finding a mental health provider and that you feel comfortable with, in which you can develop a therapeutic relationship where you both understand the goals and the purpose of you being there, and whether that is just for therapy and counseling itself, or whether medication management has to be added to your treatment plan, and understanding how this will occur, then you are able to talk about what's going on, the things of your past. You're able to be more vulnerable. You're able to let go of that mask that you've put on for the world and those tools that you've used to be a strong black man or a strong black woman or just a strong person in general. And you're able to be your most vulnerable self to address all of those things that may have occurred, those traumas that occurred, those hurt feelings that occurred. Someone may have said something to you that was never addressed, but it comes back to eat at your spirit. It comes back to eat at your total being, and it affects you in ways in which you sometimes think, oh well, that shouldn't affect me, but it does. And we never want to belittle anyone's experience or make someone think, well, their trauma isn't as bad as someone else's because X, Y, and Z happened to one person and something else happened to someone else. Trauma is trauma, and it's how it affects you. It's not a comparison ordeal, or it's not whose trauma was the biggest or whose trauma was the smallest. Once you're able to open up and figure out what are the things that are in your personal toolbox, your coping toolbox, to help you. So whether that is scripture, whether that is exercising, whether that is whatever the coping tools may be. You may be a person who likes to journal. You might be a person that likes to brain dump to get it all out. You might be a person who uses some other form of art, if it's acting, if it's singing, if it's going to church, talking with your family members. But find those things that are positive, those coping tools that are positive, so that you can get this outside of you. You're dealing with it in a healthy way, and therefore able to process it. And once this begins to occur, you'll realize that those things that used to affect you, it doesn't affect you as much. The ways that you used to act, the irritability that you used to have, the fact that you couldn't go around certain people or do certain things, then those things are not happening anymore. And that's when you can start seeing the changes in yourself, the changes in ways that you react and interact with other people, and notice that they're a little bit healthier. Not only can holding on to traumas of let's talk about suicide. So suicide is actually the act of either telling or actually taking your own life. That can be done in a multitude of manners, whether that is overdose, whether that is committing suicide by shooting yourself, or let me point this out, committing suicide by cop, in which you put yourself in a situation where you don't actively kill yourself, but you're actually putting yourself in a situation in which the police is actually shooting you or killing you. So we have to think about this when we have a number of people who are doing certain things and they put themselves in harm's way. So when you think about suicide, what normally gets a person to that point is they've reached a level of depression in which they no longer want to be alive. Their pain is so bad that they think that the only way that they could fix it is number one, taking their own life, but also where they feel like they are more harmful to the people around them. They are in a black hole and they do not see light. All they feel is pain. And so making a person feel guilty about how they're feeling in their mind, because you can't experience what someone else is experiencing in their mind. You don't know the feelings they may have. You don't know how they're tormented at night. You don't know how they have gone possibly days without sleeping, or they haven't had food, or they're constantly wishing that they were dead, how they may feel helpless, how they may feel hopeless, how they may feel guilty, how they can't concentrate, how they may sit in a room and actually just want everything dark because they don't feel light. They have thoughts that no one cares about them, thoughts that they're just a bother to everyone, thoughts that their life is worthless. And so once a person reaches that point, whether it's due to the trauma that has got them to a point where they are just that depressed, or if people don't want to use the word depression, just that blue, or whatever the terminology may be, where they're in that black hole and they can't see their way out. And once they've reached that point, then for them, taking their life is the only way that they see to end it all. It ends the pain, it ends the blueness, it ends the struggles, it ends everything that is going on in their mind. Because sometimes what they also have are voices in their head that are speaking to them and feeding them nothing but negativity. Anything that someone may have told them in the past, they're worthless, they'll never be anything, they'll never make it without them, or they're not going to be successful, or even thinking those things themselves, are all things that lead to that point where they just want to end it all. And that's when suicide occurs. They're never considering another person, because in their mind, the only thing that they're doing is causing other people more pain. And the way they see it to fix the matter is, it's resolved X, Y, if I do X, Y, and Z. And so you also have to think that there may be a number of stressors that is on a person that you may not even consider. It may be physical health struggles, it may be financial struggles, it may be the mental health struggles that they're having. And to end it all, this is how they see, I can fix all of this if I do so and so. The pain ends, the financial struggles are over. They may even see, if I take my life, then the family may be struggling now, but my insurance will pay off. If I make it look like an accident, then I know my insurance will pay off, and my children will be able to go on, because they are only thinking of, they're causing pain to them. They're in pain themselves, and they're causing pain to others because they're helpless, they're hopeless. You know, they're not worthy of being. They're not worthy of existing. So understanding that they matter, that you matter, I matter, we all matter, becomes that change that can lead them to the next day.
If you are in a crisis, call the toll-free National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This service is available to anyone who calls. All calls are confidential. Sources and statistics are provided by the World Health Organization and the National Institute of Mental Health. If you would like to share your story, go to www.simonewalker.com and send an email of interest. Want to see more You Matter stories? Make sure you subscribe. Click on the notification bell and don't forget to leave a comment.